All toy restorations will be handled by the YouTubers controlling each channel. Reproduction parts may not be used where there are Star Wars forums. Toy restorers and collectors are available. Analog Toys, Retro Blasting, Toy Galaxy, Geek Force, Zarnista Studios, and toy-polloi. Toy-polloi has been assigned.
Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today's fix is going to be one of those sort of quick and dirty fixes just to get a toy up and displayable again. Now recently I was sent in a whole box of toys by Neil Witcher, and in that lot included this Panthor and also the accessories and sort of armour bits for a Skeletor, and I thought it'd be nice to actually sort of display those two together. I've got many Skeletors without armour, so I've already put that on a figure, as you can see here. But Panthor, although he looks initially alright, there's a couple of sort of minor issues with him that I want to get fixed so that he does display properly. The first one being that his sort of seat and armour bit that goes on the back is missing the strap that holds it onto the figure, so it's very easy for this to fall off, and I think I'm just going to make something from scratch for that. It doesn't have to be perfect, I just want something that's going to hold this in place. He is also missing his eyes. You can see that he's supposed to have a little bit of yellow paint there on his eyes. The whole figure has been flocked in a nice sort of purple flock, and there's a little bit of damage to the flock, but I'm going to leave that. But without his eyes he doesn't look particularly scary, so I want to repaint those and make them look sort of as good as I can, and never actually painted on top of flock before, so that will be an interesting one. It looks like it is a sort of a slightly yellowy green paint painted on there, so we should have something in my box that will work. First thing though, let's make a new strap for his sort of back armour and the seat bit that Skeletor should sit on. Now this saddle part is actually supposed to be held on with a plastic strap, and the problem with those is that they tend to snap over time and just get lost. I've got actually a few of these for Battle Cat, the red versions, and all of them have the straps missing, so it's something, it seems increasingly hard to find. So rather than trying to recreate something out of plastic, I thought I'd go down a slightly different route and take a sort of nod from the Action Man toys that I also collect and use some elastic. I think it will work very nicely, and you can get elastic in all sorts of sizes, and it just happens I was doing a project recently where I bought some of this elastic, which is, I think it's about 11mm wide, so it's quite a thick elastic, but it just so happens that that fits almost perfectly in the gap here. So I'm thinking that I can use some of that to make a new sort of strap to hold this on the figure, and because it's elastic it's got a nice lot of stretch and it should hold it on pretty firmly. So this is what we're going to use. I'm going to do a little bit of sewing and sew a sort of loop underneath, and I think that will work quite nicely. As I say, it's not a perfect fix, but it will do a very good job, and sometimes doing a good job is all you need when fixing up a toy. So let's cut some of this off and we'll sew it onto this old saddle and see what works. So this elastic was an eBay purchase for me. If you look on eBay just for flat black elastic, all sorts of sizes come up, and I happened to buy this one, as I say, for a previous project. It just looks like it will do the job, so I cut a small length of it off. What I'm going to do is thread it through one side of the saddle and fold it over, and then on the inside I'm going to carefully sew along and sort of join these two pieces together, and then once I've got it sort of as I want, I will trim off the excess. We can then fold this around and we'll thread it back in this side like so. Again, sew it round. I'm going to work out how long this piece of elastic needs to be once I've got one end sewed in, just by sort of wrapping it around Panthor, and make sure that it's going to hold on tightly. Then we'll sew it on, and I'm hoping that there'll be enough stretch in this elastic that we can hook it over the figure and actually sort of get it held in place. So the first thing we need to do though is actually sew this side on. So I have a needle and some thread here, and I'm just going to carefully sew through until it feels nice and firm. So that's the first side sewn on. I'm just going to trim off the little bit of excess elastic there, just to neaten that up. And already that's feeling quite sturdy. So what I want to do now is I'm going to put this onto the back of Panthor just to make sure it looks good. And then we'll wrap this around. I'm going to wrap it around the wrong way just so I can see exactly how much elastic I need, and then we'll thread it on properly and we can cut it to fit. So it needs to be sort of that tight, so you can see actually how much elastic we need to get rid of, quite a bit. But once that's done like that, that is going to really hold it on quite firmly. And I think the black doesn't show up too much against the purple of the flocking. I think that should look quite good. So let's take this off again. We'll remember exactly how much we need. In fact, if I just trim this down so we've got about the same as the other side, and then I can sew that on, yeah, that should work quite well. So this time we obviously need to thread it inside because we want the sewn bit to be on the inside just to make it look as neat as we possibly can. So like that. And this one again we'll sew exactly the same way we sewed the last one. So I have another needle and thread here and we'll just get sewing. Now that that's all sewn, we can trim off the excess bit of elastic on the inside just to make this sort of a bit neater. So I'll just cut that off like so. And the moment of truth, whether we can actually stretch this elastic enough to get it over the figure. I think we possibly can. There's quite a lot of stretch in this. So yeah, look, you can just sort of push it over his feet and then we'll pull that on. And there we go. I don't think that looks too bad at all. It's really nice and firmly held in place. It's not going to fall anywhere. I know some people will say it's a shame not to do this sort of with something more in keeping with the original, but I have to say sometimes you just can't do that, and a bit of elastic like this works quite well. And actually if you look at some other He-Man figures, especially Prince Adam, his belt is made out of this sort of elastic, so I say it is quite in keeping with how some of the other figures are created. But that works really quite nicely. Let's put Skeletor on as well just to check he fits. Yeah, that's really good. So let's move on to his eyes. Now for the eyes, which is going to be the tricky bit. I don't really have the right sort of colour paint, so I've just mixed a couple that I do have to make something that's pretty close. So these are Vallejo model colours. I've got flat yellow, which is 70.953, and an intermediate green, it says here, which is 70.891. And I've made a sort of very subtly lime yellow colour. And I've got a small brush here with a pretty sort of sharp point to it, and I'm hoping that I can just sort of go slowly and paint these eyes on. I've never done this before, I've never painted flock, just have to sort of go for it sometimes, so let's give this a go. Yeah, that's a weird thing to paint. It doesn't really sort of soak in at all. Let's put a little bit more on. Yeah, that feels better. I think you've got to put quite a bit of paint on the brush so that it soaks into the flock. Well, it's an eye. I think that'll have to do. It's very hard to paint actually. It doesn't really want to sort of soak in, but yeah, I think that'll do. It certainly looks like he's got an eye, so we'll do the other one as well. And yeah, hopefully that will look half decent. Yeah, I don't think that looks too bad, considering what you're painting onto. I imagine the original eyes were a little bit sort of fluffy around the edges, but that does make quite a big difference. He looks a lot angrier. I'm just going to check some of the other paint on him, see if there's any sort of damage that needs touching up. Not too bad. His teeth are actually pretty white, and they haven't been painted all the way around anyway. It looks like the paint has only been applied to the front, so I think I'll leave those, but certainly adding the eyes makes him look a lot scarier. And there you go, there is Skeletor now sitting on the back of Panthor. A couple of quick and sort of dirty fixes there, but sometimes that really is all you need to do to get a toy to be displayable again. Without the strap holding the saddle on, it really was a bit annoying because it would sort of keep falling off. So the elastic strap doesn't look bad at all. You really can't tell that that is a sort of replacement thing, because it does sort of fit in with some of the other sort of belts that were used along the Masters of the Universe line. So I'm very happy with that, and certainly painting his eyes back on makes quite a big difference. They're not the neatest of things to paint on, but I think I've done a reasonable job there. There's a little bit of flock damage on this figure, but not enough to warrant sort of trying to repair it. I think if you try to repair the flock on something with so minor sort of rubs like this, you'd end up really seeing it. But it certainly is something that can be repaired. If you've watched any of my Action Man videos, you'll know that you can replace flock on those quite easily, and I would use the same sort of process on this one. But for now, I think this version of Skeletor and Panthor is actually pretty nice, and it's going to be able to go on display here with the rest of my Skeletor army, and it's the first Panthor I've had, so it's quite nice to be able to have one that actually looks this nice and displays this well. So I do need to say a massive thank you to Neil for sending in a big box of stuff, and that this was included in with. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.